My fiancée suddenly walked out of our cake-tasting appointment and texted me, "I can't marry you. I need someone more exciting. You're not on my level." I quietly told the bakery, cancel the order, called the venue, sold the ring, and signed a transfer out of state. An hour later, I found out she had run straight to her ex, the same guy who dumped her 2 years ago. 3 days later, she and her ex were both standing at my door, panicking, while I was already looking at apartments 3,000 miles away. My name is Jesse Camden. Until about 4 days ago, I would have described my life in terms of project milestones and contingency plans. At 31 years old, I had a career in logistics project operations, which meant I was the guy who quietly made sure everything functioned when everyone else was focused on the pitch. I was the backend system keeping the chaos from crashing. My life with Vanessa was exactly the same: organized, linear, and predictable. Our wedding was 3 months out, all deposits paid, and the guest list finalized. We had a future that looked like a very straight, secure line. Slept. That straight line brought us to an appointment at a downtown bakery, one of those highly Instagrammable places with white marble counters, glass cases full of perfect pastries, and the whole atmosphere smelling like vanilla and butter. This was supposed to be the fun part. The relaxed, sugary calm before the final wedding storm. I was there 10 minutes early because that is who I am. Vanessa was 15 minutes late because that is who she is. When she finally walked in, her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She kissed my cheek quickly, but her hand never left her phone, which she kept screened down on the table beside her. We sat at a small round table by the window, the afternoon light too bright and cheerful for the mood she carried. "You okay?" I asked, trying to keep the question light. "Yeah, just work," she said, managing a quick, practiced flash of charm. Traffic was insane. She always blamed traffic, even when the highway map was showing green. The excuse was so automatic, it barely registered anymore, but the distance in her eyes did. The baker arrived with a tray of miniature art pieces. Vanilla bean with raspberry filling, dark chocolate with salted caramel, almond with lemon curd. She presented them with the gravity of a sommelier. I took a bite of the vanilla bean and was genuinely impressed. "Oh my God," I laughed. "I'd marry this cake." Vanessa offered a polite, muted laugh, but she barely touched her samples. She cut off a tiny corner of the dark chocolate, chewed mechanically, and set her fork down. "Not a fan?" I asked. "It's fine," she said vaguely, checking her phone under the table. "They're all kind of similar." I glanced at her, sensing the shift. "You just started. We have 3 more flavors. Give it a chance, Mr. Harsh Critic." But her expression didn't change. She nodded, gave 1 or 2 vague answers to the baker's questions, and checked her phone every time she thought my attention was elsewhere. The tension in the air was thick, heavy, and quiet. The kind of quiet that means the other person is in the room, but their mind is already mentally packing a suitcase. I felt the shock, the sick realization that something fundamental was wrong. It was distant and cold. I reached across the table and rested my hand on hers. "Hey," I said softly. "You seem miles away. Are you sure everything's okay?" She pulled her hand back immediately, adjusting her cuff, avoiding my gaze. "It's fine, Jesse. I'm just tired. Long week. It's Tuesday," I noted lightly, desperate to coax a laugh, to keep the accusation out of my voice. She didn't respond. We finished the samples in near silence. The baker, sensing the strange atmosphere, smiled too brightly and said she would grab the contract and pricing breakdown folder. As soon as the swinging door closed behind her, Vanessa pushed her chair back, a look of trapped panic flashing across her face. "I need to go," she announced. My fork froze halfway to my mouth, the tiny piece of lemon curd dropping back onto the plate. "Go where?" I asked, trying to force another smile. "We're about to talk contracts. I can't do this right now." She repeated the last phrase again, gesturing vaguely between us, the table, the beautiful pastries. "I can't do this right now." My stomach dropped in a slow, sickening way, as if an elevator cable had snapped. "Jessie, what are you talking about?" She didn't answer. She grabbed her coat, her keys, her phone. "Jessie." My voice was sharper now, driven by panic. "Why are in the middle of a meeting? Can you at least wait 5 minutes so we can?" "I'll text you," she said, already walking away. I watched her back. The bell over the bakery door chimed cheerfully, marking her exit, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. The baker came back out, holding a neat folder and a practiced smile that stretched across her face. "Okay," she said, setting the papers down. "So, for servings and frosting, oh, where did your fiancé go?" I swallowed, feeling my throat tighten instantly. The shame was immediate, a hot flash against the shock. I began, the sound catching. "She just had to step out for a second. I'm not sure. I think we might need to pause on the contract." The baker's bright smile faltered, replaced by a look of careful, professional compassion. "Of course. Do you want to take the paperwork home? Think it over?" "No," I heard myself say, surprised by the steady, almost administrative tone I managed to use. "Let's just hold off for now. I'll let you know." I needed to leave. The smell of vanilla and butter, which had been so pleasant minutes before, was now cloying, suffocating. I thanked her, stood up, and walked out into the afternoon sun. I managed to reach the parking lot before the tremors started. My hands were shaking, a physical manifestation of the internal shock I was trying to suppress. The parking lot was half empty, windshields reflecting the blinding sun. Vanessa's car, a black SUV, was already gone. I pulled out my phone, expecting a text that would explain everything. "Sorry, minor emergency. Be right back." The traffic really was insane. Anything that would reduce the last 5 minutes from a catastrophic collapse to a simple, scheduling inconvenience. Nothing. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I tried a second time. Same thing. On the third attempt, the call rang once, then stopped. Declined. She had physically rejected my call. I stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the abrupt silence. The silence that felt more violent than any shout. I was still staring at the screen, the reflection of the hot afternoon blurring on the glass, when her message came through. It wasn't in the usual conversational thread. It was a standalone text, blunt and immediate. "I can't marry you. I need someone more exciting. You're not on my level. I'm sorry." For a moment, the world stopped tilting and went completely flat. The words didn't make sense in the order they appeared. Not on my level. We had picked out furniture together, chosen paint colors for the apartment, and argued for hours over whether to get a sectional or a regular couch. She had cried when I proposed. She had told me I was her foundation. And now, in 4 short lines, delivered by a messenger service of a phone, I was beneath her somehow. The shock was so profound it paralyzed me. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the sun to feel too hot on my neck, and for the low roar of the traffic to become the only sound I could hear. The baker from inside eventually stepped out for a moment, glanced at me, and then very deliberately pretended she hadn't seen my face before quickly going back inside. She had seen enough. Eventually, my body remembered how to move. It remembered how to be administrative. It remembered how to manage a crisis. I went back inside the bakery. The vanilla scent felt like an aggressive intruder. I walked up to the counter, found the same baker, and heard my own voice. Steady, calm, and utterly detached. Say, we need to cancel our order. Her eyes widened, then softened quickly. Are you sure? Yeah, I confirmed. I let out a small, humorless, choking sound that might have been a laugh. She just broke off the engagement over text. In your parking lot. Sorry. I'm not at my best right now. You don't have to apologize, the baker said quietly, her face etched with real pity. We'll waive the cancellation fee. Just take care of yourself. Okay. I nodded, thanked her again, and left. I walked out with empty hands, a canceled contract, and a 4-line text message that had just obliterated the last 2 years of my life. The drive home was a blur of disconnected details. I stopped at red lights because the car in front of me stopped. I noticed my turn signal clicking, precisely 2 times too many before I turned. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers ached with cramp. I didn't cry. The capacity for tears seemed to have been frozen by the shock. I just moved. By the time I reached our apartment building, I felt like an alien in my own life. The hallway felt wrong, lighter somehow. Inside, the wrongness snapped into sharp, brutal focus. Some of Vanessa's things were gone. Not everything, just the essentials. There was a row of empty hangers where her favorite work blouses had been. The drawer where she kept her chargers and various cables was half empty. Her toothbrush was missing from the holder in the bathroom, leaving a small, damp ring of toothpaste behind, a ghost of her presence. There was no note. No flower. No explanation beyond that cold text message. She hadn't panicked in the bakery and then made a rash decision. This wasn't a sudden break. She had planned this. She had carefully taken what she needed, left what she didn't, and then detonated our life together in the moments between trying the chocolate and the almond cakes. I sank onto the couch, the text still burning on my phone screen. The apartment, the place we had chosen together, suddenly felt hostile. Every shared object staging evidence against me. I didn't move for a long time. The freezing stillness inside me was vast. I was numb. After what might have been an hour, the feeling gave way to a cold, analytical dread. The damage was done, but I needed to understand the scope. I needed data. I did the only logical thing left. I called the one person who dealt in truth and unflappable loyalty. Ryan picked up on the second ring. Hey, future groom, he said, cheerful and loud. How's the cake? Did you find my slice yet? I swallowed, the tightness in my throat returning. Vanessa called off the wedding. The cheer evaporated. Silence, then a low, hesitant. What? She walked out of the bakery. I said, staring at the blank television screen. Texted me in the parking lot that she can't marry me, that I'm not on her level. When I got home, she'd already taken some of her stuff. Ryan didn't speak for a long few seconds. I could hear his sharp, uneven breathing, and I could almost picture him pacing the confined space of his apartment. Jess, he finally said, his voice dropping to a gravelly low. I am so sorry. I don't even know what to say. That's cruel. Yeah, I agreed. My voice sounded flat, remote. He hesitated, then took a long, audible breath. Look, I want to say anything because I didn't want to start drama. But my fingers tightened around the phone case, the plastic cracking faintly. But what? Vanessa's ex is back in town. The air left my lungs. Her ex, Alex. The intense, chaotic relationship that burned out 3 years ago. The one she swore she had happily outgrown. The one she insisted was a closed chapter in her life. Alex, I confirmed, the name tasting like rust. Yeah. The one before you. The 3-year relationship. The one who dumped her and moved to the West Coast. Ryan explained carefully. I saw him at the gym yesterday. He asked how she was doing. It was weird. The pieces began shifting inside my head, rearranging themselves from a shape of sudden heartbreak into a picture of calculated deceit. Do you think this has something to do with her? I asked, knowing the answer already. I don't know, Ryan said, choosing his words carefully. But the timing is really suspicious. After we hung up, I sat in the dimming light, unable to move. Vanessa didn't just decide I wasn't exciting enough in the middle of a cake tasting. This wasn't about vanilla bean versus chocolate. This was about something or someone else. The emotional pain was now secondary to the logical injustice of the situation. I had to know where she was. I had to know the extent of the lie. Hours later, sometime around 11 o'clock, I finally remembered the shared cloud account. Months ago, in what now felt like an act of absurd romantic naivete, we had set up a synced service for calendars, photos, and, most critically, location tracking. Just so we always know where the other is. She had insisted, and I, the project manager who appreciated data, hadn't argued. My heart started pounding against my ribs, a dull, heavy rhythm as I grabbed my laptop. The coldness that had settled over me now gave way to a feverish, focused energy. I logged into the cloud service. For a second, the screen showed my own location, pinned right where I was, on the couch in our apartment. Then, I switched the display to her profile. A map appeared, zoomed out initially to cover our city. I held my breath as the map refined, slowly, agonizingly, zooming in on a familiar section of town. It pinpointed a specific street, then a building. A small blue dot pulsed outside a house. I recognized the neighborhood. I even recognized the house, though I'd only driven past it once with her. Vanessa had pointed to it casually and said, "That's where Alex's mom lives. I spent a lot of time there back in the day." The system's location label over the blue pin confirmed the address. She had walked out of our cake tasting, texted me that I wasn't on her level, and then driven straight to her ex-boyfriend's house. The data was clean, precise, and utterly devastating. The worst part wasn't the sudden shock of betrayal. It was the confirmation that deep down, some small, tired, pragmatic part of me hadn't been surprised at all. I sat there in the dark, the laptop screen casting a pale, unforgiving light on my face. This wasn't a panic attack or a moment of spontaneous cold feet. This was premeditated. She had been lining up her exit, her replacement, while I was agonizing over vanilla bean versus lemon curd. I slammed the laptop shut. The noise echoed in the silent apartment. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. The grief was still there, vast and consuming, but it was currently eclipsed by a cold, searing analytical anger. She hadn't just broken up with me. She had executed a corporate takeover of our shared life, leaving me with the wreckage. I needed to move, to act. I was the person who fixed things, who managed crisis, who salvaged projects. I couldn't just sit there and be an emotionally wounded victim. I had to contain the damage. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, feeling like I had swallowed concrete. For a brief, blissful second, my brain tried to replay the old tape. Wedding in 3 months, check on the catering deposit, call the DJ. Then I opened my eyes and saw the gap in the closet where Vanessa's clothes had been. Right. New tape. My phone, which I had left face down on the nightstand, buzzed relentlessly. Once, then twice, then a flurry of quick, demanding pulses. For a moment, I considered just ignoring it, letting the world happen without me. But avoidance, as I knew from a decade of project management, only makes the resulting collapse messier. I flipped the phone over. 17 unread messages. Most were from people in our joint wedding group chat. Vanessa's groomsmen, a few couple friends, and some of her co-workers. I scrolled through the previews, the names blurring together with phrases like, "What happened?" and "Are you okay?" and "We're here for you." I tapped on the first one, from a mutual acquaintance. The message read, "Jesse, I'm so sorry. Vanessa told us you checked out for a while, and that she'd tried to fix things. None of us knew it was this bad. If you ever want to talk, I'm here for both of you." My chest went cold in a way that had nothing to do with heartbreak, and everything to do with disbelief. I opened the next message. "I don't want to pick sides, but Vanessa said you were seeing someone else emotionally, that the engagement hadn't felt real to you for a long time. I hope you both find happiness." Another one. "She told us you guys quietly canceled the wedding weeks ago, and yesterday was just tying up loose ends. We had no idea it was sudden, so that was the story. According to Vanessa, I had checked out. I had been distant. We had called off the wedding together, and she was simply following through on a mutual agreement." I scrolled through the messages, each one layering a new coating of spin over what had actually happened. Me eating cake samples while my fiancée rehearsed her breakup exit in the parking lot. I could have texted back with screenshots of her message, of the location map with her little dot pinned in front of Alex's mom's house. I had the undeniable data. But I didn't. I let them sit in their version for now. I got out of bed, showered, and put on old sweatpants and an oversized sweater. My reflection, in the fogged mirror, looked like someone who had hit pause on their life and forgotten to press play again. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a name that made my stomach twist. But not from pain. It was from the sudden realization of collateral damage. Sarah. Vanessa's little sister. Sarah had been thrilled about the wedding. She had texted me photos of bridesmaid dress options, even though she wasn't on my side, just so I could weigh in. We had shared memes about Vanessa's inability to load the dishwasher correctly. I answered the call. "Sarah," I said. "Jesse." Her voice was tight and strained. "What the hell happened?" I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Did Vanessa not tell you?" My voice was barely a whisper. "She told me you two had grown apart and decided together to cancel the wedding," Sarah said, the bitterness in her tone sharp. "She said you were handling it privately and didn't want people taking sides." My jaw clenched hard. "That's not what happened." "Yeah," she said quietly. "I figured, hence the call. I knew I could trust her. She deserved the truth." I started telling her. I told her about the cake tasting, the way Vanessa had checked out, the text in the parking lot. I told her about coming home to find half the apartment emptied. Slept. I told her about logging into our shared account and seeing her little location outside Alex's mom's house. On the other end of the line, Sarah went very still. "She went to Alex's?" she asked, her voice thin, nearly breaking. "She was there as of last night," I confirmed. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, Jesse. I am so sorry. I don't even have words. My parents are going to lose their minds." "Do they know anything?" "She just told them the wedding was off because we needed different things," I said, repeating Vanessa's sanitized lie. She made it sound mutual, Sarah said flatly. I'm going to kill her. Gently, with love. A small, broken sound, a mixture of a cough and a laugh, escaped me. Do me a favor, I managed. Anything? Sarah said immediately. Don't tell her we talked, I said. Just let it play out. I'm done trying to manage her narrative. There was a long pause. Okay, she said finally, her voice firming. I won't. But for the record, our family loves you. This is all on her. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. The pieces were all in place now. The betrayal, the lies, the narrative control, and the hidden replacement. I had the facts. Now, I needed to manage the project. Something inside me shifted from shock into motion. I picked up my notebook and flipped to a blank page. The time for grieving was over. The time for administrative action had begun. The administrative action had indeed begun. With Sarah's silent affirmation of loyalty, the sharp shop gave way to a cold, functional determination. I was the one clearing the rubble. I flipped the notebook open to a blank page and wrote at the top in neat, block letters, wedding cancellations. Below that, I made a list: venue, caterer, photographer, florist, DJ. I added cake and drew a sharp line through it. Already done. For the next 2 hours, I treated the death of my wedding like a critical, highly visible project. I had a clear scope, a deadline of now, and a budget of emotional pain that I was willing to pay. The most painful call was the venue. Slept. It was a renovated brick warehouse with string lights and exposed beams, a place we had toured and signed for with such naive excitement. The coordinator's voice, when she finally answered, was sympathetic but brisk. Mr. Camden, I am so sorry to hear this news. We had everything confirmed for the date. I know, I said, my voice steady. We need to cancel the contract immediately. We'll have to keep the deposit, she said, the tone becoming purely transactional. It's clearly stated in the contract, given the proximity to the date. That's fine, I replied. Keep it. Consider it a breakup tax. The phrase came out before I could stop it, and I felt a brief, hollow sense of power. Next was the caterer, then the photographer, then the florist. Each conversation was a small knife, twisting gently, but every "we'll cancel the contract" felt like cutting one more of the carefully tied strings holding me to a future that no longer existed. The photographer, a sweet woman named Maria, hesitated. Jesse, I know this is awful, but the rest of the house slept, but I have to ask. Vanessa mentioned that you two had been drifting for months, and that the sudden break was because of your distance. Is there a chance you might reconsider counseling before tearing all the paperwork up? The casual recitation of Vanessa's narrative hit me with the force of a physical blow. The lie was already in circulation, clean and operational. It was a pre-emptive strike, an effort to control the fallout before I could even explain the betrayal. Maria, I said, pausing to ensure my voice remained calm and factual. She told me she couldn't marry me via text message in a parking lot, then drove straight to her ex-boyfriend's house, whose location I tracked via our shared cloud service. She also took her essentials before the text was even sent. There will be no counseling and no reconsideration. Please process the full cancellation. There was stunned silence on the other end. Oh, Maria whispered. I understand. I am so sorry, Jesse. I'll process the refund on the remaining balance immediately. This was the variable I hadn't accounted for. The need to constantly defend my reality against her fictional one. Vanessa had given me a role in her story. The distant, emotionally checked out fiancé, and if I didn't actively fight it, that would become the accepted truth. I could either passively let her rewrite history, or I could use the truth like a weapon. I preferred the weapon. By the time I hung up with the DJ, my throat was raw and my eyes burned. Not with tears, but with the dry strain of focused effort. But there was also a strange, quiet relief settling in my chest. He had detonated the plans, but I was the one clearing the rubble and ensuring the construction site was ready for something new. Late that afternoon, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. I had spent enough emotional capital for one day, and I wasn't ready to face another person who had swallowed Vanessa's narrative whole. Almost. I answered. Hello. There was a short pause. Then a woman's voice. Jesse. Yes, this is Alex, she said. Hearing his name out loud, the catalyst of this entire explosion, was like someone dropping a glass in the middle of a silent room. I leaned heavily against the kitchen counter, bracing myself. What do you want? Alex, I asked. Look, he said, his words tumbling out fast and rushed. I know this is incredibly weird, but I feel like there's been a huge miscommunication, and you deserve to hear my side. Your side. I repeated slowly, the sarcasm sharp and metallic. Interesting. I didn't realize I was in your story at all. She told me. Alex rushed on, trying to get ahead of the conversation. That you and Vanessa had broken up weeks ago. She said the wedding was already off. That you both agreed it wasn't working. She told me she was free, Jesse. If I had known. You're at his mom's house, right? I cut in, my voice calm but laced with venom. She's there with you. A beat of absolute silence hung on the line. Yes, Alex admitted softly. Put her on speaker, I said. My voice was suddenly authoritative, project manager mode engaged. Since this apparently involves all three of us. There was another, longer pause, followed by faint shuffling and a muffled sound. I pictured them in some familiar, cluttered living room, one I'd driven past once, and I felt like a foreigner witnessing the execution of my own life. Then, Vanessa's voice came through, hesitant and small. Jesse, you told Alex we'd broken up weeks ago. I interrupted, cutting her off cleanly. That the wedding was off. That I'd moved on. Did I miss that conversation somehow? Jesse, I was going to talk to you, she pleaded, desperation creeping in. I've been thinking about ending things for a while. I didn't know how. So, you decided the most logical order of operations was 1. Line up a replacement. 2. Tell all your friends I'd checked out. 3. Dump me via text message in a bakery parking lot. And 4. Drive straight to your ex's house. My voice was shaking, but the words were precise, each one landing like a small, cold stone. It's not like that, she protested, sounding weaker than I'd ever heard her. I panicked. I felt trapped. You were so locked in on the wedding and I. And I what? I asked, pushing the point. You needed someone more exciting, someone on your level. Is that what you told him too? On the other end of the conference call, Alex remained silent. You lied to both of us, Vanessa, I stated. You were still living here. You were still wearing your ring. You were eating cake samples with me while texting him that you were free. I didn't lie. She insisted, weakly. I just left things out. That's literally what lying is. I snapped. For a second, no one spoke. The silence was heavy with the weight of her exposed falsehoods. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said finally, the admission sounding less like remorse and more like annoyance that her plan had failed to be clean. How did you mean for it to happen? I challenged. Were you going to wait until after the wedding? Cheat first, then circle back. Was that the timeline? That's not fair, she protested. I laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound. You know what's not fair? Texting your fiancé that he's not on your level while you're parked outside your ex's house. That's not fair. She went quiet. Alex cleared his throat softly on the other end. Jesse, I'm sorry. I should have asked more questions. This isn't on you, I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. I didn't hate Alex, I just hated what he represented. You believed what she told you. I did too once. I didn't wait for either of them to respond. I simply pressed the end call button. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I set it down on the cool counter and braced both palms on the surface, breathing in and out until the room stopped tilting. The anger I felt wasn't wild or volatile. It felt controlled, surgical. The truth was out, the damage contained. The cleanup project could now resume. The ringing silence after the three-way call was the deepest I had felt yet. Vanessa's web lies had been publicly, albeit to a very small public cut, and the resulting chaos was hers to manage. With the clarity of my conscience restored, I focused back on Project Clean Slate. For the next day, I didn't leave the apartment. I continued with the cancellation process, meticulously documenting the refund status of every vendor. I updated my personal calendar, replacing all wedding-related entries with appointments to interview moving companies and look at short-term leases in a city 500 miles away. My job in project operations was thankfully remote, friendly, and a change of scenery, a radical overhaul of my physical environment, felt essential. I avoided the living room and the kitchen, the places we had shared most intimately. Instead, I worked from the small, rarely used desk in the second bedroom, which I had previously designated as the future nursery. The irony of that label was not lost on me, but the room itself was clean, spare, and blessedly free of her residual presence. I received a long, contrite message from Sarah, Vanessa's sister, later that evening. She confirmed that she had not told her sister about our conversation. I'm holding the line, she wrote. They don't deserve to know how you figured it out. Let them assume you're just smarter than they are. Our parents are handling it, by the way. They believe you. That message was a lifeline. Knowing I had not completely lost the respect of her family felt like a massive win in the face of my personal defeat. 2 days after the bakery incident, I was packing the last of Vanessa's scattered possessions into neat, medium-sized cardboard boxes. I had emptied the vanity drawer, gathered her stray shoes, and removed the books from her side of the shelf. There was a weird detachment to the process, as if I were closing out a deceased colleague's office. I didn't feel anger, I felt efficiency. Around 4 o'clock, my phone rang. It was the same unrecognized number from the day before. Alex's number. I answered, wary, but ready. Hello, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Jesse, it's Alex, he confirmed. His voice sounded exhausted, strained. Look, I need to talk to you about what happened on the call. I thought we established everything that needed to be said. I replied. I'm busy packing your ex-girlfriend's things, Alex. What else could possibly require a discussion? He hesitated. Vanessa and I, we're not together. We broke up. The information hit me with the mild, dull force of a small object falling on carpet. It was expected, inevitable, and strangely anticlimactic. Already, I asked. Yeah. Massive meltdown, he confirmed. She accused me of lying to her about the timeline, even though she was the one who was still engaged. She was yelling about how she felt blindsided, and then I reminded her who was blindsided, and we called it quits. The whole thing was a disaster. I stood there in the spare room, holding a half-empty box of her toiletries. The irony was so sharp, it actually made me smile. A tight, humorless stretch of the mouth. She had run an experiment to find something better, something on her level, and it had failed in less than 72 hours. Well, I said, putting the box down. That's unfortunate for you both. She keeps asking about you. Alex continued, his voice low. If you're okay, if you're dating, if you'd ever talk to her. She's spiraling. My heartbeat didn't change tempo. The answer was a foregone conclusion. What do you tell her, Alex? I asked. That you've moved on, he said. And that she needs to do the same. She's not listening, though. She's convinced she can fix it now that the excitement wore off. Good, I said simply. Keep telling her that. And you? He asked gently. Have you moved on? I looked around the room. The freshly labeled boxes, the list of movers I was about to call. The small, quiet life resembling itself piece by piece, now entirely mine. I'm getting there, I said honestly. Some days are harder, but I am not waiting for her, and I never will. Good, he said fiercely. You deserve someone who doesn't make you a backup plan. I felt something warm settle in my chest. A small release of tension I hadn't realized I was holding. It wasn't gratitude for Alex, but gratitude for the truth, and for the fact that a complete stranger was affirming my worth when my supposed partner had done the opposite. I didn't try to offer him advice or closure. We hung up, our conversation complete. The path was cleared. The debris had been identified and removed. I taped up the last box, marking the contents in neat block letters, KT Shiem, CO Ace, BHROM. The physical process was over. The stage was set for the final, necessary confrontation, the scene that would seal the door shut forever. I was ready. 2 days later, around early afternoon, someone knocked on my apartment door. I didn't need to check the peephole. The timing, the aggressive hesitation of the knock, and the faint, familiar scent of expensive perfume told me everything I needed to know. The debris had been removed, and now the perpetrator was arriving to survey the damage. I opened the door only partially, finding Vanessa and Alex standing in the hallway. Vanessa looked terrible, her eyes slightly puffy, her hair unkempt, a stark contrast to the always polished woman I knew. Alex, standing a foot behind her, looked equally drawn, like he wanted to be anywhere else on the planet. What do you want? I asked, my voice flat, not moving aside to let them in. Vanessa flinched at the tone. Can we come in? She asked, gesturing vaguely into the apartment. We need to talk. No, I said, leaning slightly against the jamb. You can talk from there. Vanessa glanced back at Alex, who quickly looked down at the worn carpet of the hallway, then faced me again. Jesse, this got out of hand. I made some bad choices, okay. But we've all made mistakes. Is that your pitch? I asked, arching an eyebrow. We've all made mistakes, so I should let this one slide. Alex spoke up, his voice soft and hesitant. I just think you deserve a proper explanation, Jesse. Face to face. Vanessa and I realized that what she did was unacceptable, and you deserve to hear it in person. I already have an explanation, I said. I have a timestamped text message and her shared location data. That's all the context I need. A face-to-face explanation doesn't change the data points. It just makes the delivery messier. Vanessa dragged a hand over her face, frustration visible. Look, I freaked out about the wedding. I felt like everything was happening too fast. Like there was this conveyor belt I couldn't get off. When Alex came back, it stirred up a lot of old feelings. I thought, you thought you'd drive your ex before deciding whether to keep your fiancée. I cut in, finishing the sentence for her. Got it. She winced, recoiling from the harshness of the clinical assessment. It wasn't like that. She insisted. Slept, though her eyes were already telling a different story. Alex shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He clearly felt the need to contribute to the narrative of remorse. We realize we're not actually compatible anymore, he said, directing the comment to Vanessa as much as to me. We've both changed. I looked at Alex, then back to Vanessa. My voice dropped, deadly quiet. So now that you've confirmed the grass isn't greener, I said, you want to crawl back to the lawn you left half-burned and hope I'm still here watering it. Is that the gist of this conversation? That's not what I'm saying. Vanessa insisted, stepping slightly closer to the door, a move the rest of cautiously blocked. I love you, Jesse. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can postpone the wedding. Take time to rebuild trust. The pivot was astonishing. It wasn't an apology, it was a corrective action plan, designed to restore her comfortable life. What changed? I asked quietly. She blinked, confused by the question. What? 3 days ago, I wasn't on your level, I repeated, quoting her own text message back to her, ensuring every syllable was heard clearly. You needed someone more exciting. What's different now? Did the excitement wear off when you realized you had to deal with the consequences of being cruel? Her jaw tightened. She looked away, staring down the hallway, searching for an answer she couldn't give. You didn't come back because you realized what you lost, I continued, the cold certainty settling over me like a second skin. You came back because it didn't work out the way you hoped with him. You ran an experiment. And now you want your control group back. The accusation, delivered so cleanly and precisely, hit her like a physical shock. Her entire posture crumbled slightly. Behind her, Alex looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw not pity, but recognition. He understood that he was simply part of the failed hypothesis. Jesse, Alex said softly. You don't have to take her back. You know that, right? Even if she thinks you should. I know, I said, holding his gaze, confirming the alliance of the wronged. And I'm not going to. Vanessa flinched again, like I'd struck her. The denial was instant and pathetic. Jesse, don't say that. You don't mean that. We're a team. We were never a team, I corrected. Why were a FI aid you used to project stability, until you found something sheenier? Your stuff is packed in boxes by the door inside. I'll leave them on the porch tomorrow morning. Don't contact me again, Vanessa. We're done. You're not even going to consider it, she pleaded, her voice rising in pitch, desperation finally winning over dignity. You're really going to throw away our entire relationship over one mistake? Over one stupid decision I made when I was panicked? Over one massive betrayal? One carefully orchestrated lie? 1 week where you tried to rewrite reality to save yourself from accountability? I countered. No, I'm not considering that. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to find a single justification that would hold up against the weight of the facts I had just presented. Alex finally reached out and touched her arm. She shook him off, focused entirely on the closing door. I'm sorry, she said, her eyes beginning to shine with tears that might have broken me once, but now just looked like the raw, immediate result of facing the music. I'm so sorry. I'm sure you are, I said, refusing to soften my voice. Sorry it blew up. Sorry you have to face people now. But you're not sorry enough to accept that this is permanent. And that's the only apology that would matter. I took a deliberate step back and closed the door with a quiet, firm click. I stood there, my hand on the cool metal of the knob, listening. I could hear their muffled voices for a moment. Hers frustrated and sharp, his low and tired. As they slowly walked down the hall and out of the building. For the first time since the bakery, the silence that followed didn't feel like an empty void waiting to be filled. It felt like space. It felt like mine. The final, essential confrontation was over, and I had won. I had defined the truth, reclaimed my dignity, and achieved the only form of closure that was meaningful. Self-worth. The silence I stood in was not emptiness, but the profound quiet of a construction zone after the final wrecking ball has swung. I kept my hand on the doorknob for a full minute, listening until the faint sounds of the elevator descending and the lobby door closing confirmed their absence. The cleanup was finished. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, a natural, clean awakening that hadn't happened in weeks. For a moment, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. My apartment, though still carrying the shadow of the betrayal, felt different. Wounded, perhaps, but lighter, as if I had finally opened a window after a long, stale winter. I got dressed, tied my hair back, and performed the final, necessary task. One by one, I carried Vanessa's neatly stacked boxes to the porch, just outside the apartment door. Kitchen, clothes, bathroom. The labels faced outward. Block letters clean and unmistakable. It looked like the world's saddest yard sale, a tangible record of a life, meticulously edited out. I didn't wait outside. I didn't want a conversation, or a last, desperate plea, or even a glimpse of her face. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and watched from behind the blinds. Around 10 o'clock, a car pulled up at the curb. It was a rental, not Vanessa's black SUV. Alex was driving. Vanessa stepped out slowly, looking even worse than she had the day before. Her hair was messy, and her clothes looked rumpled, suggesting a sleepless night. Alex walked around to the porch, while she lingered by the car. Even from inside, I could see how carefully both of them avoided looking directly at my door, as if eye contact would be too risky. They didn't knock. They didn't linger. They loaded the boxes quickly, efficiently, and silently. A few minutes later, the rental car pulled away from the curb, disappearing down the street. It was over. The physical, immediate presence of Vanessa and Alex in my life was gone. Over the next week, the truth, or at least the necessary parts of it, leaked into the world like dye spreading through water. It started, as I expected, with Sarah calling me again. "Hey, finally told Mom and Dad everything," she said. "About Alex, about the text, about you finding out where she was." "How did they react?" I asked, bracing myself. "My mom cried," Sarah said flatly. "My dad told Vanessa. He's profoundly disappointed in her, which, to be fair, is the worst thing our dad can say. And both of them asked if they should reach out to you." I said only if you wanted them to. I swallowed, the sincerity of her family's distress touching me unexpectedly. "I appreciate that, Sarah. Tell them thank you for me. They really did love you, Jessie," she said softly. "They still do." This is all on her. Later that afternoon, Vanessa's mother messaged me. It was a long, careful apology. Slept. She didn't defend her daughter or make excuses. She simply said she was ashamed of how Vanessa had treated me, and that I deserved far better. Then, her father emailed, offering to reimburse my share of the wedding deposits. I declined both the money and the invitation to talk. Some things, I decided, don't need postmortems. The only thing they owed me was to hold their daughter accountable, and they were already doing that. Friends, though, were more complicated. Some reached out with pure sympathy. Some said they had no idea Vanessa had been struggling and hoped we'd find our way back to each other. Those were the people who had swallowed her initial narrative whole. And then there were the few who implied I'd been too rigid, too focused on checklists and timelines, as if my reliable nature was a personality flaw that justified her cheating. Those friendships quietly dissolved one by one. I didn't bother correcting them or sending them the location data. Let them believe whatever makes their world make sense. People reveal themselves when you're no longer useful to them. And I was perfectly content to let the unnecessary clutter of my social life drift away. The most shocking twist came 2 weeks after Vanessa picked up her belongings. Sarah called again, her voice bubbling like a shaken soda can. "Oh my God. Jesse," she said. "You are not going to believe this." "What?" I asked, preparing for the next layer of chaos. "Vanessa and Alex broke up," she announced. I blinked, genuinely surprised by the speed of the self-combustion. "Already?" "Yep," Sarah confirmed. "Massive meltdown." She accused him of lying to her about the timeline. He said she blindsided him emotionally. They had this huge fight and called it quits. It was poetic. Honestly, the irony was so sharp, it made me smile for real this time, a full, genuine smile. "She keeps asking about you," Sarah continued. "If you're okay. If you're dating, if you'd ever talk to her." "What do you tell her?" I asked. "That you've moved on," she said. "And that she needs to do the same." "Good," I responded. There was a pause. Then gently, "Have you moved on, Jesse?" I looked around my apartment. Slept. At the half-finished puzzle I'd bought myself on the coffee table, at the bright green houseplant I'd rescued from the grocery store. The new, quiet life was reassembling itself. "I'm getting there," I said honestly. "Some days are harder, but I'm not waiting for her. And I never will." "Good," she said fiercely. "You deserve someone who doesn't make you a backup plan." I felt something warm settle in my chest. Gratitude. Relief. Something close to peace. I was no longer defined by the wedding, or the breakup, or the insult. I was defined by the choice I had made to walk away with my integrity intact. I was ready for the next phase. Another month passed. I went to work, treating my professional life with renewed, almost aggressive focus. I started going to the gym again. I cleaned my apartment, rearranged the furniture, and took down the framed engagement photos. I replaced them with things that made me smile: a postcard from Ryan, a thrifting painting that made no sense but felt right above the couch. I adopted a dog, a 5-year-old rescue mutt named Murphy, who looked like a mixture of a lab and a small bear. He chewed my slippers, snored louder than humanly possible, but followed me around like I was the sun. He was a delightful mess, and he made me laugh every day. Vanessa didn't stop trying to communicate. A long email poured in one evening. Explanations, context, things she wished she'd said sooner. I read the first 2 paragraphs, closed the message, and deleted it without a response. A month later, a short birthday text. "Hope you're well. Thinking of you today." I left it unread. Then, through Sarah, she asked if we could meet for coffee to get closure. I didn't even hesitate. "No," I told Sarah. "I already have closure." She just wasn't part of it. Word traveled through our mutual circles that Vanessa wasn't doing great. Her parents were gently furious with her, and some friends had distanced themselves. I didn't take pleasure in it, but I didn't feel guilty either. Healing, I knew, is not owed to the person who inflicted the wound. It's been 4 months now. I've gone on a few dates. Nothing serious, nothing promising. But I'm open in a way I wasn't before. I know what I won't tolerate. I won't tolerate being made to feel like I'm not enough. Slept. I won't tolerate being someone's second choice, or being told I'm not on someone's level by a woman who needed two men to prop up her ego. Last night, I walked Murphy around the block. The streetlights glowed soft gold. As we passed a row of darkened shop windows, I caught my reflection in the glass. And for the first time in a very long time, I recognized the man looking back. A man choosing himself, not out of anger or revenge, but out of finally understanding his own worth. And honestly, that's better than any wedding I ever planned.